Hi, bestie. Welcome back to Girl House. It is just me today. If you're watching on YouTube, you can probably tell. Well, Miss Looney is here as well. Hi, Looney. Do you want to say hello? And Ducky's on the floor, and he's being really, really good. So hopefully the man is not barky today. But I thought today I would do a solo episode on here because I am talking about a topic that really just has to do with me, so I felt like it made sense. It was going to be mostly me talking to just come on here by myself today. But as you may have seen, I posted on TikTok a few days ago talking about the fact that I had a miscarriage, which is like the whole thing is like uncomfortable for me to discuss. It makes me feel like vulnerable on like another level. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but also trigger warning on this episode if like this topic is hard for you to listen to. Totally get it. And we will be back to regular scheduled programming next week. But yeah, this whole topic makes me so uncomfortable for like a lot of reasons. But the number one being I like the feeling of people pitying me or feeling bad for me. Like, nothing makes me more uncomfortable than that. And I got like such an overwhelming amount of like sweet comments on my posts. That was like definitely the most vulnerable thing I've ever posted online. And of course, I appreciate those comments so much, and I'm so thankful for everyone who's reached out to me. I just like have trouble, like, I don't know what it is about me, but like things like I can talk about being sad over a breakup fine, but like anything I guess that really has to do with like just me and like people feeling sad for me makes me so uncomfortable to the point where like I don't really like show my emotions to like really even like my close friends or family about things like this, which is so weird because I'm so close with like my friends and family, but I have like a really hard time. I don't know where it comes from. I really don't. But anyway, I guess we'll just get straight into it. Yeah, I found out I was pregnant in August. Before I get into the conversation of everything, I want to start by saying I feel like if you know me at all, you would know I'm like so pro-choice. I think if you find yourself pregnant and you want to get an abortion for like literally whatever reason or no reason at all, like I so support that. So I don't want like anyone to think that like because I chose not to get an abortion that like I did that because I'm not pro-choice, because that is like the furthest from the truth. But yeah, I found out I was pregnant in August and it was like really shocking. I kept thinking I was going to get my period. It was so weird because like I had really bad cramps and my like boobs hurt more than usual, but I was like so irritable, but I was just like, oh, like I'm just like going to get my period. But then like weeks kept going on where like I had these cramps and I wasn't getting my period. So I took a pregnancy test like just to see, and I like there was like I've had so many like quote unquote pregnancy scares before, and I was like there's no way in hell it will come up positive. And then I just remember like looking down and watching the test like go, and all of a sudden like when it's negative, I think the line on like the right, if I'm correct, is the one that comes up. But before, like literally immediately the one on the left came up, and I was like that's so weird. But I like thought it was like negative and like just like using the wrong line until the other line came up, and it came up like fast. And so I was like, this pregnancy test is kind of old, and I also only peed on it for like 2 seconds because I like had no pee left in me. I wasn't even really planning on taking it. I just like randomly did. And so then I Instacarted like another box of pregnancy tests, and they all came up positive as well. And it was like just like very shocking. But it was weird, like not in that moment, like I didn't feel panicked at all, and I didn't like question what I was going to do at all. Like I knew I was going to keep it. And I think like background for that, and I'll like go into background on the guy too, because like this was with someone I literally to dispel the rumors right now, because I've already seen like what's coming up as a suggestion in my miscarriage video on TikTok. It was not with anyone knows. It was not with anyone I even know, and I will get into that. But I have said like since I was like in high school, like that like if I ever got pregnant, like I just know myself, and I know I wouldn't be able to get a miscarriage, because I have wanted a baby since like the day I was born. I've like always loved babies. And like I just know I will one day make like a really great mom. And I feel like that, like I always am like, I don't know why I'm getting like really emotional. It's making me uncomfortable. But I like sometimes feel like I don't know what my purpose is. Obviously, I talk about that all the time. But I do know that like probably one of my big purposes is going to be like being a mom, and I know I'm going to be like really good at that when that time does come. But I've like always wanted that for like as long as I can remember. So I knew like if I ever did accidentally get pregnant, like no matter what the situation, like just knowing myself, like I would go through with it, because like God forbid like I got an abortion like when I like got pregnant with someone. And like once again, this is just like my perspective, like I said, I don't want to repeat like I'm not gonna repeat this the whole time, like you get the point. But like I'm very pro-choice, this is just how I feel. But like I just know like if I got a miscarriage and then like one day later like for some reason like couldn't get pregnant, like my mom had ovarian cancer after she had me, like that's genetic, like that freaks me out. So I'm like, what if I got pregnant and then got an abortion, and then like later I had to get my ovaries removed and like couldn't have a baby by myself? Like I don't know, it just, I know it's something I would regret and like live with that regret for the rest of my life, and that is just like not worth it to me. So when I found out that I was pregnant, there was just like, I was like, there's no, like it just wasn't a question. Like I always knew what would happen when and if this moment came, if it wasn't like a good situation. I just like, I know myself, and I know I could do it. Like obviously it wouldn't be easy, but also like I am 27 now, and while I would be definitely like, if this had happened, I would be doing it completely by myself. I do kind of have like all my other ducks in a row, if you will. Like I have a stable career, I have a stable income, I'm like financially secure, I definitely like have the mental stability and like just like life stability and time that like I know I could definitely I don't want to say very easily do it, but like obviously it would be very difficult, but I definitely could do it. So for me, like it just, yeah, I guess that is my whole like backstory. And like I just like knew I could do it, and there wasn't really any reason for me not to do it. And while I would be doing it alone, like I knew like eventually I'd still meet my person, and that person could obviously fill like the father role for this child when that point came. And I just know that from like my own family dynamic. Like my mom had my brother when she was 19, and then she met my dad a few years later. And like it all worked out is the point. So like I knew, do you know what I mean? Like I knew it would be fine. Where was I going with this point? I don't know where I was going with that point, other than like I knew the whole situation, like it would be fine, and like this baby would have like so much love around it. Like just the fact that like the who would have been the biological dad wasn't involved, like I would just make sure that space was like so filled. But yeah, how I got pregnant, I guess I will get into that. It's crazy. I guess the pull-out method like is not like 100%, which like obviously, but I don't know. I've done that. This is like my first year. I also got off birth control a year ago, not to try to get pregnant, but because I felt like it was just like I didn't know who I was on birth control. And I was on it for like 10, 12 years. And I was just like, I don't even know what this is doing to my body or like my reproductive system or like my mental health. And I was on Nexplanon, which a lot of people say like contributes to anxiety. And like, if you know me, you know I have anxiety. So I was like, anything that could help with that. So I got off Nexplanon about a year ago. And so I guess like Nexplanon's pretty foolproof. So I was like never careful. I've had like the mentality of not needing to be careful with sex, I guess. But like this past year when I have had sex, which has not been often, like it's crazy. I literally only I only had sex twice this summer with 2 different people and like 1 time each. And aside from that, like I hadn't had sex since January. So it's not like I'm like going around having sex all the time. I'm like in like a celibate state right now. Also, that was not to say like I have had many times in my life where I have been going around and just like hooking up with like a ton of people. So like no shame if you're in that stage of your life. I have been there. Anyway, my whole point, like this was just like so crazy because I actually talked about this guy on the podcast of like a month and a half ago. But I went on a date with this guy from Hinge. He came over and he was like he's the guy that we said like we thought was a serial killer because he was like really awkwardly shy in a weird way. And then he kept like and that's fine, but it was just like really severe. So we both like drank a lot because it was just so awkward. And then like Celia came and joined and we all went to El Chucho and like got more drunk. But the whole time he was like really belittling and condescending to me. Like he kept telling me like advising me that I definitely should pursue law, like just like really shitting on the whole like influencer career, which like whatever, like a lot of people feel that way. But like it's also just like I would never shit on like his job and be like you should go find a new it's just like a weird thing to do. And Celia and I thought he was a serial killer because like the one thing he kept saying to me was like you shouldn't have random guys over at your house, like. And then like after we had sex, basically we had sex and he pulled out. Like I know he pulled out because I remember he asked like where he should come and I was like not in me. And so like we had the whole conversation about it. So be careful because that method it's not foolproof. But I remember like right after we hooked up, he like was like, you should be really careful like who you have over, like you never know who they are, like I'm just a random guy, like you don't know, to the point where I literally was like, are you trying to tell me like I should be concerned I'm in a room with you? And he was like, no, I'm just saying like you need to be. It was like just weird. Anyway, he left like immediately after we hooked up and I texted him the next day because like I honestly did have like a good time despite him being creepy. Like I think it was just like me and Celia were like drinking, having fun. He was drinking. It was just like a fun night. I just texted him the next morning and I said I had a great time last night and I left it at that. And like he never responded and I never reached out again because it wasn't like that deep. I didn't know him. And then like we started thinking he was a serial killer. So I was like, anyway. But then obviously after I found out I was pregnant, I was like, fuck, this is so uncomfortable. I have to reach out to him. Because I just felt like obviously it would be like fucked up to not tell him. So I texted him and was like, can you chat later? And he was like, yeah. And he called me or I called him. I don't know. The details don't matter. Anyway, I told him I was pregnant and he handled it like terribly, which like I expected because like obviously it's like very shocking. But I will also add that like he is a 30-year-old man and he like definitely knew. I think he knew he like accidentally came in me and like did not say anything, because when I like told him like I don't know how this happened, like I know you pulled out, like he didn't even like, he was freaking the hell out, but he like didn't question like whether it could be his or like he seemed like he like had a feeling. He just by the way he responded, I think he knew he like did. Anyway, he was like very adamant about me getting an abortion, and was basically saying like that was the only option. This is another thing he said, and this was like the one thing I was worried about, because he, like, just like he said before, like, you should never have like a random guy over at your house. On the phone, after I told him I was pregnant, he was like, so you're just gonna have a random guy's baby? And he was like, you have no idea what problems I have in my genes. And like, so I like am convinced he's like a literal sociopath, and I was worried about that because that is genetic. But yeah, it was like a 20-minute phone call of him begging me to get an abortion, and me just like saying like, I'm sorry, I won't. And I told him like, I am not asking you to be involved, I am just like telling you because I feel like I need to tell you. And he kept like being like, I don't get why you would want to do this. And I was like, I don't know how to explain it to you other than like, I know I'd regret it. And he was like, well, I'm going to regret that there is a child out there that like I'm just going to never be involved in their lives. And I was like, if that's like a regret you have, like that's like on you. Like, I'm telling you, like, you can choose whatever role you want to have in this. You can choose to be involved, or you can choose to not be involved at all. And I was like, I'm not going to ask you for like any sort of child support. I'm not going to beg you to be involved. I'm totally fine, like, and like planned on doing this on my own. I just thought you should know. So like, I made it very clear, like, I had no intention of forcing him to be involved. I had no intention of like forcing him to pay anything, which like he should feel pretty lucky like I went that easy on him, because I feel like I didn't have to, but like I don't want to force someone to be involved in something or force someone to like pay for. I just wasn't going to like ask someone or like beg someone to be involved when they didn't want to. And I also like, clearly like he just doesn't fuck with me, and like honestly I don't fuck with him either. It was like a wild situation, but I was just like telling him that he should know. Anyway, he like basically hung up because it was clear like this conversation like wasn't going anywhere. Like, I wasn't gonna get an abortion. I basically just kept telling him like a broken record, like, you don't need to be involved, I'm just telling you. And then him being like, get an abortion, you're crazy. So ended the phone call, and he texted me like 30 minutes later, and I'm just gonna read you the text because this was the most insane text ever. And I think like this annoys me so much, because he, I think, thinks like I literally was like choosing to keep this baby because like he thought I was obsessed with him or something, which, you know me, if I was obsessed with him, I would tell you. I didn't plan to ever see or speak to this man again. He just like obviously doesn't understand that like I have always, he just like doesn't know my whole background that I just told you. Anyway, he texted me, I genuinely can't tell if you're fucking with me because I never responded. And this is, he never responded to the I had a great time tonight. If so, I apologize because I had a good time with you and I just didn't feel a connection and didn't want to waste either of our time. Otherwise, I thought you guys were fun to hang with. If you are being serious, I hope that you give this more thought. I think we should meet in person to talk this through. So this man, like, first of all, this man is 30, by the way, and he thinks that and I do love to prank, but like not on situations like this. He thought I was pranking him to get back at him for not texting me back. Like, I've just been like seething, and like all I can do, I'm just like all consumed by the fact he didn't text me back. And I was like, oh, here's the perfect plan. Let me have like a 20-minute phone call with him and tell him I'm pregnant. Like, that is insane and not something like, what the hell? I mean, maybe I could see myself doing that in high school. Not really, but like, that's just like, that's insane. I'm not like, I love to prank, but when it's like funny, not when it's something like this. Anyway, I texted back. I said, I actually was never planning on reaching out to you again, but I did think it was my responsibility to tell you about this. You're welcome to come chat in person if that helps you. Which he never responded to. And yeah, so I honestly, like, I didn't feel any type of way. Like I said, like, obviously it would be so much harder if like this was someone I was like hooking up with like frequently and like had feelings for, and like then they didn't want to be involved. Like, that would be hard for me. But like, I just know myself, and I was like so sure and like knew I could do it myself that like it wasn't really an issue. And this is the craziest thing to me. So he is a 30-year-old man. Let me just really emphasize he's 30 years old, and this is how he chose to handle the situation. So I didn't expect to hear from him again. He clearly made it clear he was not choosing to be involved. But I was talking to a lot of family and family friends about the situation, and everyone kind of urged me to text him and just get something in writing that he can confirm that he doesn't want to be involved. Legally, it's really hard for someone to get them, at least in the state of California, to terminate their parental rights. The courts, that person has to go to the court to petition, and the court has to be an extreme situation and the court has to approve it. But there's also something called child abandonment, where if they're not involved for a certain period of time, it I don't know if it completely terminates their parental rights, but at least temporarily. But I just didn't want to get in a situation where this baby turned into a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, and all of a sudden he has a moral compass and chooses to want to be involved and be maybe back and forth wishy-washy and kind of just come in and fuck up this child's life. So I just wanted him, if he's not going to be involved and he doesn't ever want to talk again, that's fine. But I just wanted him to terminate his parental rights. And obviously if he texted me down the line and was dying to be involved, and that's a conversation, but I didn't want him to try to come in all of a sudden not knowing this child at all years down the line and try to just immediately get 50-50 custody, if you know what I'm trying to say, which you just never know what's going to happen. So this is the crazy part. I texted him and I said, "Hi, I think so we can both move forward in this situation." This was a week later. "It would be best if you could just send a text confirming that you terminate your parental rights so that it's in writing." And it didn't deliver. And I was no way, this man blocked me. And then I never followed him on Instagram, but I had obviously searched his Instagram before we went on a date, because you always obviously stalk someone before you go on a date with anyone. So I went to go look up his Instagram, and it didn't come up. And then Celia tried to look it up, and it didn't come up on her phone either. But her sister looked it up, and it did come up immediately. And Viv looked it up, my friend Viv looked it up, and it came up immediately. And then I went to Hinge, and I was let's see if he removed me on Hinge too. And he had removed me on Hinge, and he blocked my number. So this 30-year-old man who got me pregnant, obviously yeah, it's a shitty situation for both of us, and obviously it wasn't planned. But his solution to this situation, once he realized I was going to go through with it, was to just block me on every platform and just pretend it wasn't happening. Which I just think, obviously, in my head, I was okay, this makes it a lot easier for me. But that is just, I just can't, I don't know, I can't imagine being 30 and finding that to be the solution to getting someone pregnant. And obviously it's a two-way road. I played a role in getting pregnant, he played a role in getting me pregnant. But I just thought I don't know, I just think that is insane, and so not even immature, just immoral. I can't, whatever, but to each their own. After that, I told my parents, and that was I don't know how to explain it, but that was just the most embarrassing conversation I've ever had. And I think even when I do get pregnant again, and hopefully next time it's when I'm with someone and I'm in love, and it's a much more loving and happy and easy situation, I know it will still be just as uncomfortable for me to say those words again. It just I know I'll feel really uncomfortable when I get engaged too. That will make me really fucking uncomfortable to share. It's just anything when the attention is something on me, it makes me so uncomfortable. Birthdays, so uncomfortable. And being pregnant, that makes me so uncomfortable. It feels so vulnerable, and it's also something that I'm not familiar with. So like I don't know about it, if that makes sense. And like that makes me like, when I moved to LA, for example, I felt really awkward living here for the first like 6 months because I didn't know the area, and that made me feel embarrassed. Just like I don't know what it's like to have a baby like that. Anyway, and like obviously also like you're telling everyone you've had sex, and that is uncomfortable. And for me, my like circle is very luckily like family and friends and family friends, all very like non-judgmental. So luckily like that wasn't like a like, oh my god, like you hooked up with a random man. Like no one was like gonna shame me, but like it did make me feel awkward that like everyone knew I just had sex with this random guy. Like I don't like to talk about having sex. It just makes me uncomfortable with like my family. Anyway, I told my parents, and that was like the hardest part because it was just like, I also just felt like, I know I'm 27, but it felt like a teen pregnancy. Like it felt so like this is just like I should be ashamed, even though like I know I'm 27 and it's like fine. But I decided like obviously I was going to go through with it, and so I started kind of trying to plan what I was going to do. And I realized like eventually I'm going to be in LA like pretty much by myself with like no friends here. Like not sure when, but I know within a few years like Celia wants to go back to the East Coast, and I have like acquaintances here, but I don't really have any other like strong friendships, and I don't have any family in LA. Well, actually I do have an aunt here, but I don't have a lot of family in LA. And like while I do, most of my family is in California. They're all in like Northern California, and I'd obviously want my parents around if I was like having a baby, like regardless, but especially having a baby by myself. And so I started kind of playing with the idea of moving back to the East Coast. And for the first month of like thinking I was going to move back to the East Coast, and I know like Celia and I like kind of mentioned and like teased that idea on here, like because obviously we knew it was going on like behind the scenes, but like couldn't talk about it. The idea of moving to the East Coast was like devastating to me. I literally couldn't even like say like, yeah, I'm gonna leave LA without crying. Like it was an immediate tear reaction. I would just immediately start sobbing. And so like, but I also knew staying here like essentially like by myself with just me and a baby would be really difficult too. Like once again, I know I could do it, but that would be really hard and like really isolating. And I have my parents and my grandpa on the East Coast. I have like all of my friends on the East Coast, like good friends, like are all on the East Coast. And so it was just starting to like make sense. And so I got a real estate agent, and I was looking to buy a house because I just felt like that made sense. I was like thinking of moving close to where my parents live so that like for the first year I could just like be very close by if I needed help, which I'm sure I would have. And so like that like was the plan. There are not a lot of, it's very slim pickings around where I grew up because it's just like a really small town. So there's not that much like for sale because it's a small town. But there were like some cute houses I was looking at. And I was like going back and forth between like whether I was going to rent or if I was going to buy. But it was definitely looking a lot more like I was going to buy a house just because there's like very slim pickings, like I said. And like the houses that were available to rent, there's literally like 3 houses available to rent in and around my hometown, and they would all go immediately. And like they also just like weren't anything that I want, like not even really like workable. And then there were like apartments, but like I don't want to go back to living in an apartment from like living in a house, and like that was upsetting to me because like I love my house here in Venice. And so, and like I have the pets and there would be a baby, so I was gonna buy a house. And I started like really looking into that and kind of just getting ready to move home. I told my landlord that I am pregnant and I'm going to probably need to break the lease soon. And he was really understanding about it. And like, he said he did need some help with me like filling the lease, but that he was like understanding and I could move home. So my plan was, up until last week, my plan was to move home in December, buy a house there, and live there, like have the baby and go through the first few years living there. And like the nice thing about that is like I could still go like visit my friends in Boston, visit New York, like travel, like I could still do all of that, but like I'd have a home base and I'd have help. So I guess that's like one of the weirdest parts about all of this. Like obviously like it's the loss of like the idea of like having a baby, but on top of that, like I think it's just weird because I had this whole vision all of a sudden. Like it took a lot of planning, but like I kind of had to like figure out what I was going to do with my life to make this easier. And at the time, like in the beginning, like these decisions were like so hard and uncomfortable, and like the idea of leaving LA felt just like devastating to me. But the more and more I thought about it, like I got excited. Like it honestly does suck being across the country from my parents, and it does suck like being across the country from like my friends. Like obviously I have my best friend here and it's great, but I knew she would eventually go back too, and like eventually it would just be me in LA. And like I kind of got to like thinking and realizing like during this whole thing that like there's not that much LA has to offer me. Like it's not a bad place for me. I think I grew a lot here, but I also like I don't really have a friend group here. I have acquaintances here for sure, but like I don't really have any like good friends here, obviously, aside from Celia. But I'm like talking about an LA world where like Celia's not here. And I feel like if anything, moving to LA hurt my career, because I think I got so in my head about people being upset with me being here. I stopped posting. People also just like have a very big like assumption of LA and like what it does to people, and just like immediately stopped like fucking with me like the second I moved to LA. But I don't know, it's just like it's weird now. And like this whole time like planning everything, like I was like very nervous about a miscarriage. It's almost like I knew it was gonna happen. It's really weird because like I mean I would talk about it all the time. Like I had such a strong feeling it was going to happen. It's like my body knew. And so when I went into my first doctor's appointment to get my ultrasound, like I thought I was 7 weeks along, because you're supposed to base it on like the first day of your last period. And so I thought I was 7 weeks along, but when I got there, they did like a vaginal ultrasound, and she was like, you're reading more at like 5 weeks, 5 days. But it wasn't concerning because we could see the heartbeat, and she was just like, if you have irregular periods, like this can happen. And I do have irregular periods, like they're starting to get more normal, but it just like made sense that it could be a week late. So it was like nothing for concern, but I still just like, I had this weird, like such a strong feeling that it wasn't gonna happen. Like I feel like, for example, like I'm pretty good at manifesting things until like all of a sudden like something changes and I know like it's not gonna happen for me. And like I feel like when I have trouble manifesting something, like it's because like it's not happening or not supposed to be. I don't know how to explain it. So anyway, I had another appointment like a week and a half after, when like I would be actually like over 7 weeks. And it was weird because like I had like very strong feelings like this wasn't gonna happen, and obviously like some of that's like anxiety and like too, and like I'm a hypochondriac, so I'm sure like next time I am pregnant, well, especially now, I'm sure I'll be like even more nervous and worried about a miscarriage. I think that's just like normal in early pregnancy, because miscarriage is so common in early pregnancy, like especially like before you hit, like, don't quote me on the statistic, but before you hit like 7 weeks, like I know in the very beginning there's like a 20% chance, and it goes down to like 15, but it doesn't go down to like a 5% chance till you hit like 12 weeks or something, or maybe by 12 weeks is a 1% chance. But anyway, point being, it's like very common, so it was like a valid concern. But it was weird because like my symptoms like did progress after that appointment. Like I started getting not like morning sickness where I was throwing up. I was really queasy all day. I was really sensitive. Like any sense would like make me like immediately feel like I was gonna throw up. My boobs like have never hurt so bad in my life, and like I had cramping, so like, which also was like normal. So like all in all, like all the symptoms were there. And so I honestly went into the appointment most recently like pretty confident that like I would just go in, I'd see the heartbeat, and like we'd move on and like progress in the pregnancy. And when I got there, we did like another ultrasound, and like I immediately could tell like something was off, because like I looked at it and it looked like a lot different than last time, but it didn't look like what I'd seen like on TikTok of like progressions of like when it grows. And she was like really silent, and like I didn't see like any, like last time you could see like the heartbeat flickering, like I didn't see any of that. And then she told me that there was no heartbeat, and that it was still basically at the same place it was last time I was. Like it was like maybe like a day, like I think last time it was like 5 weeks 5 days, and it measured at like 5 weeks 6 days this time. So I guess like the day after I had gone, or like like a few days after, like it became non-viable, which is so weird because like my symptoms increased. I just had such a strong gut feeling like it wasn't gonna happen, and then it didn't, which is like weird. And obviously that fucks with my OCD, because now I'm like, for me with OCD it's so hard to like distinguish between like a gut feeling and anxiety. But anyway, when she first told me that, like I obviously wanted to cry, but crying in front of people makes me like really uncomfortable, despite what some may think, because I do cry online all the time, but I don't know how to explain it. Like online I feel like it's my safe space, and I feel comfortable crying on there, because I'm not actually crying. Like to me it's just like I'm crying on my phone, and then I post, and like I know whatever I talk about can like help someone, hopefully, or it's just like me sharing what I'm going through. But I don't like crying in front of people. It makes me feel really uncomfortable, and I get really embarrassed. So I just tried really hard not to cry, and it was so hard because like then she like asked the technician to leave, and then it was just me and her, and then she kept telling me like she was sorry, and like, you know, like when someone says like they're sorry, or like ask if you're okay, like you immediately start crying if you're trying not to. But like I really tried to hold it in, and then she was like, you basically have a few options. You can wait for it to pass itself, because basically what I had is called like a missed miscarriage, because I didn't bleed at all. I didn't even have like spotting. It's like crazy. Like I would put like toilet paper like up me to like double check and make sure there was no blood, and like sometimes there'd be like a tiny bit of pink, but like literally nothing. And spotting's very normal in early pregnancy, so like I didn't have like any bleeding, and like my symptoms were increasing. Like I literally had no idea. And so she had me sign some papers, and like basically said my options were, I could let it pass naturally, but that could take like weeks or months, which that's like such a crazy thing. And like all of these states, like obviously like it's just so fucked up that like states are like banning abortion medication, because there's so many needs for it. Obviously, number one being like, if a woman doesn't want to have a baby, like they should not have to have a baby. Like that's fucking insane to try to force someone. But also like people need to get an abortion for like a health reason, and it could put them at risk if like they don't, like it's just so crazy. And like this situation, like I had people comment on my TikTok yesterday saying that they like too had like a miscarriage, but they didn't have access to get abortion medication. They just had to wait for it to pass naturally, which like I'm sure that is traumatic too, like knowing that you have a embryo in you, like what was supposed to be your baby, and like it's no longer viable, and you just have to like walk around and every day like wait for that to pass. That's just crazy. So I'm so thankful I live in a state that's not like fucked up and going so backwards in time. But that is just like a whole, I could go on about that. It's just, that's crazy that that's even a thing. But anyway, then I had the option to take like the pill abortion, where you just like basically like it's an at-home abortion, or I could have a surgery. But and don't quote me on this because like I don't know, but I've heard the surgery, they're like more invasive and it can make it harder to get pregnant in the future. And obviously like I do want to get pregnant in the future. Like it's crazy because like I always thought I was like infertile. Apparently this is like a really common, like whenever I talk to other girls about this, they're like, oh my god, I feel the same way. So maybe it's like more common than I think, but like I've just always had this gut feeling I'm infertile, which like I guess I'm not, so that's good at least, but like I want to stay that way. And so I chose the abortion pill, and I just like could not even expect what it was going to be like. I get really bad periods, so she gave me like a prescription for extra strength Tylenol, and also some nausea medication. But I was just like really nervous, and she told me like it might be really painful since I already have really bad periods. So then she was like, I can give you a narcotic as well. So she gave me an oxy prescription as well. And then after I had that whole conversation, I'm trying not to cry still. Then I had to go down to the first floor and get my blood drawn. I was like, oh my god, I just want to like get the fuck out of this hospital and just like go cry. And then I had to go get my blood drawn, and like the nurse was like, oh, how's your day? And I just like, obviously I wasn't gonna be like, oh, I just found out like I had a miscarriage. I was just like, oh yeah, it's like great. And then I got in my car and cried, but like I didn't even like, I don't think like, I mean, it's like, it's a weird thing, and I talked about this on my TikTok, but like I do genuinely feel like very relieved, like, because while I was excited to have this baby, like, and I know I could do it and I know I would be a very good mom, like I also obviously like it wasn't the ideal situation. Like I even felt like weird about it. Like I felt weird about when I was going to announce it, because I knew people were going to think I was weird for choosing to do it on my own, like from the get-go, with like someone I didn't know, and like it was just going to be me. And I was like, yeah, I just knew like it was weird, because like all of a sudden my life was like me being 27 and going out and having fun, and then to me getting pregnant and like entering this whole new phase of life, which like I was excited for, but also like I don't think totally ready for, because I think anyone can, this is fair to say, like would, and I mean I can't speak for everyone, but I think pregnancy and having a baby would be a lot more pleasant of experience with like a partner by your side, and that's a way I would rather do it. And I still kind of feel like I'm not totally ready to be, I know I could be, but I don't feel like I'm totally ready to be responsible for another human being, but I also know I could be. So it's like a really weird thing, and it's weird because like I had my whole life planned out. Like all of a sudden like everything was changing. I was moving closer to home. I was excited about that. I was going to buy a house. I was excited about that. And I was just like entering this new phase of life, and I knew it was going to be really hard and really different, but like I was ready for it. But so like it's weird because I feel sad, but I also feel relieved. But I also don't like showing emotion. So like to anyone who's asked me about it, like I'm more sad than I think anyone in my personal life knows, because I don't want like anyone to feel bad for me. Like, oh my god, I don't want to cry, but yeah, I don't want anyone to feel bad for me because it makes me really uncomfortable, and like I don't want people to pity me. That makes me feel so awkward, and I don't want people to worry about me. I also just feel like weird for being upset about it in the first place because it was a weird situation. Like it wasn't like I felt weird that I got pregnant, and like I feel like the normal reaction when you get pregnant with someone you don't know is to get an abortion, and my reaction was like to not. Like I felt like I already felt weird about that, but I knew it's just like what I wanted, so I felt weird about the whole situation. And then I felt weird about being sad because it makes me uncomfortable, and also I don't feel like it's like I feel like it's weird to be upset about it because it wasn't planned and it wasn't with anyone I knew, and it was going to be really hard. So anyway, it's just like a really complex situation, and I feel like like no one in my real life even knows I'm upset unless like people in my real life are listening to this podcast right now. But like to everyone in my personal life, I've just kind of said like, yeah, I am relieved because it makes sense, and it will come when it's like time to come. And like obviously that's all true, but I think because I am trying to put on such a front that I'm just completely relieved to everyone so that no one feels bad for me, that will just make it worse for me. I think I haven't really processed like also how I feel about it, but I definitely like, I'm not just saying I am relieved, like I am relieved, which is like a weird thing, but it's also sad, which like leads me to my next point. Like I just don't know what I'm going to do with my life now, because I think like the thing that does give me comfort is like I do know like this, like obviously like it was not time to have this baby yet, and I like truly believe like souls come and are like, I'm not a religious person, but like I do believe in like the universe and like souls and like some kind of higher being, and like I do believe like whatever soul was going to be, like it will just come at a later time. Like probably like it was just obvious to the universe like I wasn't completely ready yet, but it's just like hard now because I had my whole life planned out. Like I was going to go home, like I said, I was going to buy a house and like leave LA, and at first that was so hard for me to grapple with, but like now all of a sudden I was like really excited about it and like looking forward to it, which is weird. And so now I'm like, and like I said, I know eventually it's gonna be just me in LA, and so I don't know, now I'm like in this really weird place where now I don't have any reason to leave LA again. And like before this happened, I had like no plans to leave LA like anytime soon. Like maybe leave LA and stay in Southern California, but like I planned to be here for like such a long time, and I felt devastated about the like I couldn't even talk about the idea of leaving without like sobbing. But now like after this whole situation happened, like now I'm like, why am I in LA? Like there really isn't anything here for me, and I think moving back to the East Coast, like, which I can't even believe I'm saying this, but like I think it could be comforting and it could be nice to be closer to my parents and be closer to all my other friends. And I don't know, but like now I'm like, obviously like I was only gonna move to my hometown like if I was gonna buy a house, and also like my landlord like assumes I'm like trying to fill the lease right now and is like gonna help me do that. So it's just like this whole, I really don't know what I'm gonna do. Like a few days ago I was like, I guess I could like move literally back into my parents' house for like a few months and like just regroup and like figure out. But I also know for like my mental health, like I love my parents, but like I love living alone and being independent, so I don't think that is a good option for me. But I just like don't know where I would go or what I would do if I moved back to the East Coast, because I don't want to move to my hometown. Like there's no like I just feel like I'd be okay moving closer to where I grew up, like once I was like married or like settling down with like a baby, but like just randomly moving there would just be like a lot for me. But it's also like I don't want to move to a city again. I don't want to move. Obviously, New York's not New England, but it's like close enough. I went to college in Boston, but like I don't want to. I feel like Boston was like college for me. So then I'm like, I really don't know what I'm going to do. Like I was looking like I could move to like a suburb outside of Boston where I'm like 20 minutes out and like get a house, and that way I'm like an hour and a half away from my parents and grandpa, and also like a lot of my close friends live in Boston, so that would be really nice because I would have them all there. So I guess like that's an option, but it's just weird because like I didn't even have like any desire to leave LA at all until I found out I was pregnant, and like even then like I felt so upset about it that like I didn't even like get okay with the idea until like literally a few weeks ago. So then I'm also like I could stay in LA like before this happened. Like I know eventually it's going to be just me in LA and I won't really have any friends here, and I'll be far away from family everywhere. Like my family in the Bay Area, 6 hours away drive or an hour flight, but like, and then my parents 6 hour flight. Like it's just like, and then all my friends 6 hour flight. I just really don't know. Like I don't know what I want to do. I feel very like lost and confused right now about my entire life. So, and like I just feel like it's so random to pick up and leave LA and like go move to a suburb outside of Boston, but something also sounds so comforting, like that idea, because I just know I could go home all the time and like see my family all the time, which would be really nice. And I think as I get older, like I want to be closer to family. I don't know. It's just like, but I also could stay in LA. I'm going in circles. I really have no idea here. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you're in a similar lost situation where you don't know where you want to live, or you have any suggestions, like all advice is appreciated right now because I don't really know what to do or where to move or what my plan is. Like it's really just all up in the air right now. So that is my big update, and I feel really uncomfortable sharing all of this. Like it just feels too vulnerable. But yeah, I am sad about the situation, but I also am relieved. So it's just weird. And I know like it just wasn't the right timing, but yeah, I got a lot of DMs from people saying that they were in similar situations and this helped them so much because they felt like they couldn't talk to anyone about it or couldn't talk about it at all and felt like ashamed or like weird or whatever. So if you're listening to this and this helps you, I guess like that's like the one benefit of like always oversharing like crazy online is that hopefully it helps people. Because yeah, that's always my goal, and I'm really lucky that I'm able to reach people and help them. That makes me so happy, and I'm so thankful for all the people who reached out to me. It meant so much to me. I like literally read every comment. I've been reading every DM, and if I haven't gotten back to you yet, just know like I love you and I'm grateful for you. But yeah, sorry, this episode was kind of like a Debbie Downer, but it's just what's going on in my life right now, and I feel really awkward about this episode. It makes me like so uncomfortable, but I think it's important to share because I just don't think like this is really like ever talked about online. So hopefully it can help someone else that maybe is in my situation. So anyway, next week back to regular scheduled programming. Celia will be back on the app. And yeah, make sure to follow Girl House Pod. Also, if you want to watch the YouTube version of this, go subscribe to Girl House Pod on YouTube. All YouTube uploads are uploaded just to Girl House Pod separately now, so I can keep my YouTube channel for just my YouTube videos, like vlogs. And if you have any like podcast ideas, make sure to DM Girl House Pod. And I will talk to you all next week, and I hope you have a great weekend. I love you. Bye.